All right, let's start content block 1. Let's start our common module revision. So what we've done so far is the stuff on the left. We've had a full term focus on the common module. We've studied a prescribed text, and then you also likely did a related text for your assessment. Most people did a video or a website, some sort of multimodal, right? You've done that. You've likely assessed through a multimodal presentation or pre-prepared essay, different human experiences, the ways they're similar in these prescribed and related texts, and the ways they're different. We've done that. We can check that off. Now, we're going to look at smaller chunks of the common module and practice them, okay? We're going to ditch our related text. Hopefully, we all know we don't need that related text anymore, and only focus on our prescribed text. Now, moving forward, you'll only look at the common module in the context of an essay, right? No more multimodals. So now we're really looking at the common module through the lens of essay writing. And that's going to be the case for every module after you do it, because obviously now the only other time you'll be assessed on the common module is trials and the HSC. So we really need to say, okay, we know all that about the common module. We can talk about human experiences. We can talk about anomalies, practices, inconsistencies. Okay, how can we actually apply that to essay writing in a way that's effective and concise? And that's what I want to do with you today. All right, so how will this affect your approach and study? You kind of need to start to rethink the way you approach the common module in general. You need to have frequent, productive revision of the module and text where possible. This is the big one that everyone kind of cringes at hearing. If you want to do well in English, and particularly the common module, you're going to have to practice. Term 1, as in last term, you didn't really have to practice consistently all throughout the term, obviously, because A, you're still learning, and B, you really had only one assessment. After that assessment, you could kind of push it to the side. However, what's going to start to happen now is this kind of started to happen in year 11, but it's something that really fleshes out in year 12. You're going to be learning a whole bunch of new content, right? You're going to be learning mod A, mod B, mod C. Your teacher isn't really going to go back and focus on the common mod. They might do little days of revision or a little session here and there, but it's really up to you now to ensure that you're remembering the common module, because even though it might be in the forefront of your mind right now because you've just, come out of freshly studying it, when you do mod A, when you do mod B, trust me, it feels like last year and you won't remember. So you need to have that frequent and productive revision. If you're asking, but what is that actual revision? Hold on for a second. We'll go through that. Okay, using the module to guide your learning, note construction, and written responses. Okay, here's that revision. We need to always look at the module or the rubric, right? Please never, ever, ever forget about the rubric. Another thing that I see very common in some of my own students that I tutor and like other responses that I've seen, something that happens a lot is, for some reason, students start to forget those key terms and phrases that are really unique to the common module. So what do I mean by that? I mean, last term, you would have not stopped hearing about inconsistencies, paradoxes, anomalies, right? You're probably like, oh, don't even say that. It's cringing me out. I hate hearing it. But something that happens, and it's really strange, is once I see students start to do module A and module B, they start to forget about those key terms like that. And in their writing, they just lose it. It's not there anymore. Another thing that actually also happens, and this might sound a little bit unbelievable, is they stop talking about human experiences and start talking about themes. Because in module A and module B, you'll start talking about themes and ideas rather than human experiences, obviously. And so that's something I also see. So it's important to keep the rubric up beside you every time you're studying, even if it's just a little quick refresh. You just have a skim and you go, yeah, that's right, I remember all of that. It's so important because you remember, oh yeah, human experiences, oh yeah, anomalies, blah, 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 blah. Okay, note construction. Hopefully by now we've finished our notes for the common module, and that kind of has to be done. I would say aim, if you haven't finished your notes for the common mod, aim to finish it before you start school. I think most of you start school in like 20-ish days, something like that. So that gives you plenty of time to finish it. Why? Because you won't have time. Now we're doing revision. We're not learning, okay? Note construction is when you're learning. You make notes as you go along and kind of flesh out those notes. Now we're revising. So we have to have something to go back to. Okay, written responses. This is the biggest way to improve in English. This is the most successful kind of way to study writing responses. As I said, you're now only going to be assessed for the common module through the lens of an essay writing. So you need to be doing that, right? And you need to be handing it in to your teacher, older siblings, friends to get feedback and really be able to grow. Okay, diving much deeper into your prescribed text to compensate for the lack of related text and to broaden your understanding of it. Yes. If you didn't have that many human experiences for your prescribed text last term, you could kind of get away with it because you had your related text you could rely on. Now, your essay is only going to be about your prescribed text. So you really need to go back to your notes and make edits. Do you have enough human experiences to talk about? Do you have a diverse range of human experiences you could talk about? And the best way to know if you have quote unquote diverse human experiences, look at different questions, look at HSC questions, trial questions, maybe ask your teacher for some questions and see, could I talk about something here? Is this a human experience that I have or human experiences that I have that I could actually use to answer this question? No. Maybe I should start to think about what else from my text could be used to talk about in this response. Okay, where was I up to? Oh yes, adapting to exam conditions and utilizing available resources to maximize success. So working on your exam strategies. I cannot stress enough, as I just said, practice writing, practice writing, practice writing. I know it's something we all hate doing. Trust me, I was in your shoes once upon a time. I would look at the paper and be like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not doing any practice writing. But you really just have to kind of have that discipline over time and build it up. Now, when I say do practice writing, I'm not saying sit down and write a whole essay every day. You don't need to. That would be unnecessary, and that's the fastest way to burn yourself out. What I would be doing if I was in your position right now is maybe once a week, twice a week, writing a body paragraph on one human experience, submitting it to my teacher, getting some feedback, maybe talking to my teacher. What do you think I did well? What do I need to improve in? All right, cool. I'm going to go back and rewrite this, or I'm going to go back and rewrite a chunk. I'm going to go and write a new body paragraph and build it up, right? Go from one body paragraph to two body paragraphs, ease your way into it. The biggest way to burn out and the biggest way to give up before you've even started is to tell yourself you have to sit down and write an essay. That's a big misconception. And yeah, it's just, you're literally going to burn out if you do that. All right. So we need to use the module to guide your learning, note construction, and written responses. To expand on this, you need to have a good understanding of the key concepts of the common module, text and human experiences. So let's go through the rubric, right? I said it's important to remember it and refresh your mind by going over it. So let's do that together. Normally with rubrics, the main conceptual stuff, so the main things that are unique to the rubric will be in the top half of the rubric. This goes for all rubrics, Common Mod, Mod A, etc. And then the bottom half is usually about how you will respond to these texts. So something like, hopefully you can see my mouse, but they make increasingly informed judgments about how blah, 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 right? So it's on you. The first half, though, is usually about what you need to be looking for in these texts. So let's do a quick skim through. In this common module, students deepen their understanding of how texts represent individual and collective human experiences. Okay, we know that. We need to be looking at both the individual and collective. They examine how texts represent human qualities and emotions associated with or arising from these experiences. Yes, so within your individual and collective human experience, something that a lot of students miss is you don't just look at what are these experiences, you need to look at what do we learn about human qualities and what do we learn about human emotions. Remember, a human quality is a tendency or a behavioral pattern. So maybe the tendency to self-doubt or doubt others, the tendency to be self-conscious. Those are tendencies of humanity. It's something that's consistent across all cultures, religions, whatever. We all kind of share those tendencies. Emotions, obviously, we can kind of gather that those are more like feelings or episodes of feelings like depression, grief, hatred, those sorts of things. All right, we're going to skip down and go to the next highlighted part. Students explore how text may give insight into the anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human behavior and motivations. All right, that's packed full of stuff. Firstly, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies. We'll go over that in a second, so I'm going to not talk about that. Human behavior and motivations. Obviously, this sounds really self-explanatory. Everyone knows what a behavior is and everyone knows what a motivation is. But a lot of people don't talk about it in their essays, and it's like literally right there in the rubric. You need to talk about how human behavior and motivations underpin human experiences, okay? So how have some people's motivations led to a certain human experience? How do we see that in the text, okay? How do we see how human behavior can have an input or can influence the human experience? Those are the sort of questions you want to be answering. Okay, inviting the respondent to see the world differently, to challenge assumptions, ignite new ideas, or reflect personally. That bit there is what I like to call the why, and it's something that really differentiates a Band 5 English Standard student or a Band 4 English Standard student from your Band 6s. My students who have answered the why successfully it's been pretty consistent that they've performed well in the common module, if not went on to get a Band 6. What do I mean by the why? And if any of my students are watching, I'm so sorry because I know you hear me say the why so often. But, okay, what I mean by the why. The why is almost like the audience effect. Why is your composer showing you this human experience? It's the biggest thing by far that common mod essays lack, and it's what drops you down. What a lot of students do is tell me that in this text we see, I don't know, masculinity, the experience of masculinity, and, if you're doing Billy Elliot, Billy suffered, intense, rigid ideals about masculinity. Cool, I agree, yep, it sounds good. Why? Why did Dowdry, yes, Dowdry's the composer, almost had a brain fart there, but yes, Dowdry. Why is Dowdry actually showing us this? What is he trying to say about us? What is he trying to say about our world, our behaviors, our motivations, our human qualities? That's the big question that's not answered by a lot of students. And I really want to emphasize that. Please do not overlook what I just said, because I'm telling you, it's not done by so many students, and you just can't, you're kind of capping yourself. I'll say it like that. You're capping yourself if you're not answering that question. Why is your composer showing us this human experience? It's great that you've told me about the human experience and you've shown me proof of it. Go on now to tell me why is he showing, or her or whoever, showing us this human experience, okay? Sorry to kind of ramble on about that, but yeah, that by far is the number one thing that drops down students when they're writing. Okay. They may also consider the role of storytelling throughout time to express and reflect particular lives and cultures. This is another thing which can be part of that answer to the why. Why is your composer showing us this human experience? The role of storytelling, okay? My composer has used the storytelling in this way, so that's me answering the role of storytelling, to do this, okay, to express and reflect this particular aspect of life. That's me answering the why. So simply by phrasing it in that way allows you to answer the why and also allows you to respond to this part of the rubric. So instead of just saying, my composer showed us this human experience, you could say, my composer has manipulated the form of storytelling to deliver this message, whatever it is, okay? It's a bit broad because I don't know all of your text that you're studying. You're just going to have to apply it to your text. Okay. Remember, if you have any questions, please drop it down below because I can probably anticipate that there are some questions that are going to be coming up. All right. There are 4 main concepts of the Comma Module. And if you were at my lecture last year I did before you guys got into year 12, you would remember me kind of going over these. So obviously we have individual and collective experiences. We have human qualities and emotions, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human motivations and behaviors, and storytelling, as I just said, and the role of storytelling in particular to reflect and express particular lives and cultures. So let's go through them in a bit more detail one by one so we really kind of recap them. All right, so what does this encompass? Well, individual and collective human experiences encompass the personal or private, so it's the individual, and the group or the public, the collective. Individual is pertaining to a single person having a unique and or relatable experience. Collective is pertaining to multiple persons sharing a common experience. Both are interrelated and invariably impact one another. The example I like to give is you all went through prelims, right? At the end of year 11, you all did your prelims. But the way you performed in prelims and the way you felt about prelims is completely different to the way your best friend or your friend group or whoever went through prelims and felt about prelims. Okay, so the collective human experience was you all going through prelims. Your individual experience of prelims is different, person to person. That's a great way to look at your text, okay? They're all positioned in the setting, the world space, whatever your text may be, but they all respond to the world space and they all feel the world space differently. All right, so when we're looking at the individual, we're really focusing on attitudes, beliefs, ideologies, personalities, values, perspectives, and philosophies, and not only of theirs, but how others' attitudes, beliefs, ideologies affect them, okay, and how they're responding to it. If we're looking at the collective, we're looking at social norms, worldviews, responsibilities, and institutions. Obviously, it's we're kind of zooming out, right? It's on a greater scale. Both, nonetheless, we're still looking at identities, worlds, contexts, and of course, experiences. All right, human qualities and emotions. Responses and reactions to the human experience, okay? As I said, when you look at human experience, you need to look at what human qualities and emotions that we learn and we ascertain from looking at this human experience in your text, okay? So the qualities encompass broader characteristics. Those are those tendencies that I was talking about or patterns of behavior. Emotions, they refer to more specific responses such as feelings. It can be those we relate to, we are unfamiliar with, we actively overlook, and or are afraid of acknowledging, okay? It can be broad spectrum. It can be whatever. It's really relevant and specific to your text. What's important, though, is that you are answering what are the human qualities and emotions we see through this human experience. That's the bottom line. All right, so what are qualities? Things like compassion, heroism, bravery, loyalty, maturity, imagination, rebellion, ambition, courage, independence, empathy. They're patterns of behavior. We can express empathy. It's not really a feeling. We don't really feel empathy. Emotions, however, happy, anxiety, anger, disgust. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you can see the difference. I would even go as far to say quality, try to make it even more about tendencies. Okay, so as I said before, things like self-doubt, things like self-consciousness, things like holding a grudge against others, things like having that other view, meaning that when we see people that are different to us and don't look the same or don't act the same, we label them the other and we immediately feel some animosity towards them or trepidation towards interacting with them. That's a tendency. You see how holding a grudge isn't an emotion. It's a tendency of humanity to do that. Those are the things that you want to be able to see in your prescribed text. They're difficult, I understand, but that's what we mean now by really making our analysis complex and bringing out those more complex parts of your prescribed text. If I say related text moving forward, I mean prescribed text. I'm going to have to force myself to not muck up and say that though. All right, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human behavior and motivations. Human motivations and behaviors are inherently complex. This simply means it is not always straightforward how and why someone thinks, acts, or behaves a certain way. Yes, the best example of this complexity is if you have and this is very common in your common module text, you'll have a central character or central characters who act against the societal norm, okay? And on the surface level, you look at that and you think, okay, but why would you act against the social norm if you could be bullied, if you could be murdered, if you could be imprisoned? Why would you? So it's a paradox, okay? We're starting to bring in that terminology. But the whole point of a paradox is when you unpack it and you go more deep and more further, you start to understand it. Oh, well, the reason why they do that is because it's their only source of happiness. Or maybe they're fighting for what's right, or whatever it may be. On the surface level, you look at it and go, okay, why would someone do that? But then you unpack their motivations, see? And then it starts to make more sense, okay? So I basically just described what a paradox is. But I wanted to also bring in motivations. So motivations are the driving forces that determine human actions. As you can see, as I just said, it's really important to consider motivations when you're looking at anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies, because specifically with paradoxes, they help justify the paradox. When we initially think, okay, but why was my character doing that? That doesn't really make sense. You look at their motivations and you think, oh, okay, that makes better sense now. Behavior, it refers to how the humans act on those motivations. Don't confuse behavior with a human experience. A human experience can be shared, even if it's individual. What I mean by that, because I know that might sound confusing, is let's say I'm going through the human experience of grief. It's something everyone can go through, okay? But the way I personally go through that human experience depends on my behavior and motivations. So even if it's my individual experience of grief, we all can individually go through grief. But a lot of people confuse it with behavior. No, the way I experience that human experience is different. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sure you guys will let me know in the Slido. Please do, and I'll unpack it some more. So motivations determine behavior, and behavior is determined by motivations, as we just spoke about. Anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human behavior and motivations. So anomalies are something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected, right? Like an outlier in math. Paradoxes, a person or thing that combines contradictory features or qualities. As I said, the best way we can look at this is if you have a character who goes against social norms. You look at that at the surface level and think, why would someone want to go against social norms? Wouldn't that mean that, they could be harmed in some way? But then you look at their motivations and behavior and you think, okay, now it makes more sense. That's a paradox. Inconsistencies is something which fails to remain constant. So, do you have a character who changes their behavior, changes their motivations at some point in your text? They're an inconsistent character, okay? It's easy to look at, for example, I'll do Billy Elliot because I know a lot of people study Billy Elliot. It's easy to look at Billy's father as inconsistent, right? Because he changes the way he is and becomes more tolerant. However, you could also look at Billy as an inconsistent character. So please don't forget that, because he also changes. He becomes more tolerant of his father in the same way his father becomes more tolerant of him. So yeah, don't always go for the obvious choice. There is also try to look for inconsistencies across all your characters. Okay. Note, even though these sound like the nastiest concepts, they are basically saying, hey, human experiences are complex. Yes. And ultimately, it's a really good idea at the end of your essay to try to relate what you've been talking about in your thesis to the idea that this shows us human experiences overall are complex, intricate things. Okay. Or humanity as a whole is fragile and complex and intricate and all those kinds of great words we love to use. Try to relate it to that idea because Nessa loves that. And your marker will, imagine they have like a check in their, a tick in their mind and they go, yes, yes, yes. Any question you get asking you to discuss the complexity of an aspect of the human experience, you can use 1, 2, or all 3 of these concepts to formulate your response. Yes. I have had students ask me, should I do 1 body paragraph on anomalies, 1 on paradoxes, 1 on inconsistencies? It's my belief that no, I don't believe you should do that. What I think you should do is have your human experience in each body paragraph, whether that be a theme-based paragraph where you have a main theme and you look at a human experience within it, or it's just a human experience paragraph where you focus on one human experience. If that doesn't make full sense, we're going to go into paragraph structure in a little while, so hold off on that. But going back to what I was trying to say, what you should do is try to make links to 1 or 2 of these in each body paragraph. Okay, so here in this human experience, we see this anomaly and this paradox. And then in this body paragraph, with this human experience, we see these inconsistencies and these anomalies. We just see these inconsistencies. Try and do it all throughout rather than distinctly, because your marker wants to see that you can see these across your text. It's not just in one human experience, I see an anomaly. All right, so to give you better examples relevant to your text, Harry in Past the Shallows, who is afraid of water and does not share a love for surfing like his brothers, oh my gosh, what is happening to my reading today? His brothers Miles and Joe do. Okay, he's an outlier. He's different from the rest. Paradox, Danforth, a judge in Puritan society who is antagonized and eventually misjudges people in the crucible. Doesn't make sense at the surface level, but when you unpack it, you start to understand his motivations and see why. An inconsistency, Jackie, motivated by his care for his son, changes from rejection to acceptance towards Billy's passion for ballet. Spoke about that and how Jackie, Billy's father, for those of you who are doing Billy Elliot, can be an inconsistent character. All right. The role of storytelling to express and reflect particular lives and cultures. All right, so we're looking at storytelling as an agent for communication, okay? It's basically the medium to deliver a message to us. Storytelling is the use of stories and narratives shared as a means to instill moral values. It provides a window into experiences that may or may not align with our own. Yes, if they align with our own, meaning they're human experiences that are something we're familiar with, they could teach us about ourselves. If they're a human experience we've never felt before and it's something we weren't even really aware of, it teaches us empathy and it allows us to learn about different worldviews and learn about different kinds of people. Culture. And this is really relevant for your next module, so keep yourself reminded of this. Culture are the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. This includes experiences shaped from social class, gender, nationality, race, and lifestyle. All right, so these are not just abstract concepts. You need to apply them to your prescribed text. Yes, as I've been mentioning, all throughout your essay, you need to talk about all these things that we've just spoken about. I'm not just doing it kind of for the fun of it. As I said, we're approaching this through essay writing, so let's get serious now. We need to apply all those concepts to our essays. So begin to ask yourself questions like, for individual and collective experiences, what are some of the individual and collective experiences represented in my text? Do I have enough to answer a diverse range of questions? Questions about form. Questions about a specific type of human experience. So for example, if you're doing Billy Elliot again, you could be asked about gender. If you're doing Past the Shallows, you could be asked about family and family bonds, kinship, stuff like that, okay? If you're asked about that, do you only have one human experience you could talk about, or could you have 2 or 3 or 4? Those are the sorts of things that you want to start doing. You can see now the importance of practice writing. Not even just practice writing, but responding to questions, different types of questions and kind of picking up the different kinds of questions you can be asked and ensuring that you're prepared for the different questions you can be asked. Okay, for human qualities and emotions, you want to start to ask yourself, what human qualities are being displayed in my texts? And I'm going to expand on that. What human qualities can I see within each of these human experiences that I want to talk about? Are any of these qualities reaffirming or challenging expectations? If so, what are those expectations? In what ways does your prescribed text explore emotion and or evoke an emotional response? Okay, cool. For anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies, you want to start to ask yourself, what are some of the human motivations explored in your text? Can this help justify some of the paradoxes? What behaviors have emerged from those motivations? Can you identify how any of them, I don't know what I meant to say there, but I think I mean to say now, underpin or justify anomalies, paradoxes, or inconsistencies? Role of storytelling to express and reflect particular lives and cultures. You want to ask yourself, how does your text use narrative to represent certain lives and cultures? Why is your text sharing this narrative? What is its significance? I don't want to go on about this too much because it was asked last year for English Advanced. So I'm not sure if they would ask you. Don't take my word for this fully, but something to just stay aware of. A lot of students, in my experience, do not look at form for the common module. They do, I see it the most in Mod B. A lot of students and like responses I get, they look at form a lot in Mod B because your teacher will tell you to focus on it a lot. However, in the common mod, a lot of students don't look at form. What do I mean by form? Form is the construction of your text. Okay, so you're used to things like your literary devices, and usually, when you're analyzing a text, you'll say through the use of a metaphor, through the use of polysyndeton, or whatever it is. Form is the bigger things that when you zoom out of a text, it's things that, and this is how I always like to describe it, don't just occur on one page, on one line in that one sentence. So a simile, right? It's on page 12. It's on this line. She was as fast as a lion. Okay, it was a really awful one. It's the first thing that came to mind, but you can see how that's a simile. It only occurred on that page in that line. Form are the bigger ones, like setting, characterization, the way your character develops through your text, costuming, dialogue, all the big ones. The ones that setting, as you can see, it doesn't just happen in one line. It's usually revisited all across the novel, so it has a greater significance than just one simile. That's form. In their English Advanced, I know you guys are English Standard, but no one really, even for English Advanced, looked at form for the common mod. People just look at human experiences and that's it. So when they got asked about it in last year's HSC, some people who hadn't prepared were kind of stumped and were thinking, oh my gosh, how do I talk about form here? So why am I saying this? Because this one here, when you're looking at the role of storytelling, storytelling refers to the craft of writing, not to, if anyone knows that that's the name of Module C, I don't want to talk about that yet, but that's what it's referring to, right? And that craft is really about the forming of a story, form, okay? So don't phrase your essay entirely about form, but definitely bring it in. Because again, it's one of those things that as a marker, when I see a student's sophisticated in their writing and talking about that, it's like a tick. In my mind, I'm going, yeah, I really like this. All right, let's keep going. We went over this, the power of storytelling effectively to invite the respondent to see the world differently, challenge assumptions, ignite new ideas, or reflect personally. This is all about the audience impact, okay? This is the why that I was talking about before. Use these different aspects of audience impact to help you come up with the why. Think, is my text making me see the world differently? Is it? Oh yeah, it is, in this way, in this way, in this way. I can form those together to come up with my why. My text is making me see the world differently, okay? That could be part of your why. Is it also making you challenge assumptions or any of the other ones? Okay, so yeah, if going back to what I was saying about the why, if you're kind of still thinking about it and maybe still struggling with that idea, start here. I would literally, if I were you, dot point, write down, okay, see the world differently. Oh yeah, my text does in these ways. Ignite new ideas. Yeah, it does in these ways. And you can start to kind of form the why. A big thing to also note is that why. I'm sorry, I know I keep saying it. As I said, my students hate me for it as well, but it is the really important thing that you want to talk about. But yeah, that why will change essay to essay. Why will it change? Because you'll be asked about different things. Sometimes in a question, they can literally ask you something like, how does your text ignite new ideas? If your why has only answered see the world differently, you're going to be a little bit stuck, okay? It is quite easy, I'm not going to lie, it is a little bit easy just to shift it in new phrasing and effectively say the same thing, but you have to be used to doing that. So yeah, I would, and odds are your text kind of responds to all of these dot points. It's very rare that your text, only does one. You just need to be able to phrase it in a way that responds to each one. So how's your text see the world differently? Challenge assumptions, etc., etc. All right. This is another thing. You need to have at least 3 quotes under each rubric concept, okay? If a quote can be used for more than one rubric concept, use it, okay? For many. Work smarter, not harder. All right. I know I spoke about how you can structure your essays, and now we're at it. So one way you can do it is to have both individual and collective human experiences that you're looking at. So here you can see I and C is obviously individual, collective. Body paragraph 1, individual. 2, collective. 3, individual and collective. How did I do it for my HSC? This might sound a little bit confusing, but the way I did it is in my body paragraph 1, I would look at a collective human experience and then the individual human experiences within that, maybe 2 or 3, and how these individual human experiences responded to this greater human experience. That's the way I did it. That's a different way you can do it. What was I going to say? Yes, another thing, a little side note, another thing you can do is look at a theme and then look at the human experiences within that, okay? Rather than only looking at a human experience in a body paragraph. So let's say I do a body paragraph on Billy Elliot's masculinity, okay? That's my first human experience. Rather than looking at his human experience of masculinity, my theme could just be gender roles and social ideology, and then I look at how his human experience of masculinity has responded to that. Either way is fine. You can just do straight out just the human experience, or you could look at a theme and then the human experiences that go along with that. Either way, you can do well. It's just kind of finding what works for you. All right. Second thing is if you're asked about qualities and emotions, you can do 1 body paragraph on qualities and 1 body paragraph on emotions, and then 1 body paragraph on both. You could also do both in each, which is probably what I would actually suggest more now, having a think about it. I would suggest trying to make links to these in each of your, sorry, I'm just turning on the aircon because it is Sydney and it is really hot. Yes, you try to make links to those in all 3 of your body paragraphs. All right, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies. Again, yeah, I'm actually going to veto this one as well. Sorry, guys, if you've got like the slides up in front of you. Do all 3 of these, or at least 1 or 2 of them in each body paragraph, okay? So body paragraph 1 could have anomalies, paradoxes, body paragraph 2, paradoxes, inconsistencies. I said that before, hopefully we remember. The role of storytelling, if you're asked about it, you need to obviously talk about it in each of your body paragraph. Okay, so this is a sample application. Again, I chose Billy Elliot because it's the most common ones. Yeah, the one that the majority of people do. So you could have your introduction being around 150 words. I could have an individual experience body paragraph on gender, and then a collective one on acceptance, and then combine them and look at nationalism. All right, and then my conclusion. As you can see, I still use themes to structure the essay, but have given them a module-tailored focus to ensure that the essay will ultimately respond to the question with text and human experiences. Yeah, these are themes, right? Gender is a theme, acceptance is a theme, nationalism is a theme. You can experience gender and you can experience acceptance, but masculinity is more specific and it's more relevant to the text, okay? So that would be the human experience rather than gender. Because gender is very broad and vague, but masculinity, you can see how that's really specific to Billy Elliot. If you're studying Billy Elliot. For those of you that aren't studying Billy Elliot, he basically kind of challenges ideals surrounding masculinity, right? He really wants to pursue ballet, and everyone around him kind of tells him, no, boys don't do ballet, that kind of thing. So he's challenging masculinity. You can see how that's really specific to him rather than just gender, which is really broad. So my theme is gender, but in that body paragraph, I will relate it to that individual experience of masculinity. All right, so these are the different prescribed texts that we have. Hopefully we're really familiar with that. We should be. Okay, you can think about, research, make notes on, or write about themes, context, characters, scenes, setting, rubric, concepts. And I'll go as far to say you must make notes, and you must write about all these things, okay? Don't just write about one of these things, you need to write about all of them within your text. Not your text, your essays. So it's not like you have one character body paragraph and then one theme body paragraph and one on context. Obviously, these are the elements that make up a good essay. All right, so introductions. Here is a really solid introduction framework that really you can use across all the modules in English, and even if you're doing a HISI subject, you can use this structure. So first sentence is a thesis. Remember, your thesis is only one sentence. Your thesis must do a couple things. Obviously, respond to the question, okay? It should not use the words of the question. If you're asked a question that says, to what extent, I should not see in your thesis, to a great extent, not in English, okay? If you do a HISI subject, that works perfectly. If you're someone that does legal studies, yeah, sure, go ahead. However, in English, no. If I see, and this is coming from my marking point of view, if I see you kind of regurgitating the words of the question, already I'm kind of, they need to change that, okay? Second thing is, obviously, you need to introduce your thesis or your through line. So the best way I like to explain this is, if you were asked the question, and if you've been to my lecture before, you know I use this example a lot, but if you were asked the question, ice cream is yummy, or is ice cream yummy? And then body paragraph 1 is chocolate ice cream is yummy, so therefore ice cream's yummy. Body paragraph 2 is vanilla ice cream's yummy, so therefore ice cream's yummy. And then, mint ice cream, right? You can see how, even though each of my body paragraphs talks about something completely different, so chocolate, vanilla, I think, and then mint, they're all different, but you can see there's still that through line. I'm still talking about ice cream. I know that sounds really weird, but relating that back to the Common Mod essay, you need to have that through line that connects each of the body paragraphs. And I know that's really difficult, because sometimes you look at a question, you go, okay, what are the arguments I could use here? Yep, I could use this one, this one, this one. You need to then go, okay, but how am I going to join them together? That's your thesis, okay? That through line. And then the second sentence, you can introduce your text. You can also introduce it in your thesis. You can say, Stephen Dalledry's Billy Elliot does this. That's fine. I like to do it in the second sentence, doesn't really matter. And then apply your personal thesis to your text. You can also give some context, okay? A little bit of background context. Now, with context, be really careful. Another thing I see in a lot of students' writing is they talk about context unnecessarily. I don't mean that they're bringing up context when you shouldn't. I mean, they're bringing up context, but it's not relevant to what they're talking about. If I was writing about Billy Elliot, I'll keep going with Billy Elliot, and I was not talking about gender or masculinity or anything like that at all, but then in my introduction, I said, Billy Elliot emerged during a period of where society began to grapple with and challenge ideals surrounding masculinity and gender, and ideas surrounding the equality of the sexes, okay? I know that was really clumsily worded. I just came up with it on the spot. If I was talking about all of that context in my introduction, but then didn't really talk about gender and masculinity in my essay, you can see, from my perspective as a marker, you start to think, is this really relevant though? Like, you're telling me all this about the context. I want the context that's relevant to your arguments. So a little side note, that's another thing I see marking. Talk about context for sure, but make specific links to your argument. Context shouldn't just be a blanket statement where you talk about, Dowdry came from this time, or your composer came from this time. You need to make it specific to your argument. Context needs to be working for you. Okay, then you want to signpost your arguments and provide further details about your argument. So here you're literally introducing your arguments and relating them to your thesis. A great way to do this, and the way I would typically do this, is, let's say I've said my thesis, I've introduced my text and introduced the context that's relevant to that. I can then go off and say, my composer makes this most evident through these human experiences, this, okay? Something like that, where you can say that this is seen or this is proven in these human experiences. Then you can also relate back to context and bring in the purpose and the audience. Your last sentence is the why, okay? Your audience impact. Tell me why. What is the ultimate goal of your composer? What are they trying to say to you or show you, okay? Your why. In every English essay, try to make your last sentence of your introduction the why or the audience impact. Your audience impact will change module to module. Don't worry too much about that now. We'll talk about that when we get into Module A, but you'll also start to figure that out as you go through English. But yeah, just know it should mostly be it should be responding to what is the audience impact. Okay, so we've done section 1, we've covered it. That's all I'm going to touch on for section 1 of the exam, meaning the essay. I'm now going to look at short answer questions. If you still have questions about something I said, or I didn't quite touch on something that you wanted a response to, Slido, okay? Ask me in the Q&A, and then during our break time, I will cover it. All right, so section 1 is your short answer questions. Hopefully this isn't a shock to everyone. We should all know this. You can be asked a question that's 3 marks. I haven't really seen a lot of 2-mark questions. 3 marks all the way up until even honestly like 8 or 9 markers I've seen before, but usually it's within the 3 to 7 mark range. If you're asked a 3 to 4 mark question, it's usually 1 paragraph. If it's a 6 to 7 or even above a 5 mark question, and meaning if it's a 5, depending on what the question is, you could do 2 body paragraphs, okay? But if it's a 6 and up, definitely 2 body paragraphs. And a thesis statement. So thesis statement, 2 body paragraphs, and maybe a line of conclusion, but you don't really need it. All right, so if it's a 3 to 4 mark question, here are your steps. You have your concept statement where you're responding to the question and introducing the main idea of the body paragraph. You introduce the text and your evidence, and you analyze that evidence, and you keep analyzing depending on the mark range, and then you link back to the main point. The biggest thing I can say for your short answer questions, because I think a big thing with a lot of students is that they find that they're repeating themselves over and over with just different evidence. So if you have an image of, someone getting bullied, and this is really generic and simple, don't say this, but let's say your idea was bullying is wrong. The composer is showing us that bullying is wrong. Let's say I picked out different elements that showed that. I could feel like I'm just repeating myself by saying that this shows us that bullying is wrong. And then this shows us that bullying is wrong. And then this shows us that bullying is wrong. That's something I see a lot. A way to combat that is build up to your final answer. So if I'm trying to say that bullying is wrong, maybe I could draw out, maybe the central character in the image is crying or like really depressed or something. And I could say that here we see the emotions of someone who's being bullied. And then maybe I see the bully and I see what they're doing, and I can say, here we see the bully and the motivations behind their bullying. And then we see maybe bystanders and they're shocked. And then I can ultimately build up and say, along with these other two characters' expressions, we can see by the facial expressions and the body language that bullying is wrong. I know that was really generic and really weird, but you can see I built up. I didn't just say bullying is wrong, bullying is wrong, bullying is wrong. I said we see how bullying affects someone, we see the person that's bullying, and then we see everyone else's expression, and that shows us that bullying is wrong. And that's a good way to not repeat yourself. Okay, for a 6 or 7 mark question, as I said, you have your line of, like your thesis, sorry, I was looking for the word there. Then your first body paragraph, your second body paragraph, and then maybe one line of conclusion. But you honestly don't really need that, especially if you're looking at the clock and you see you don't have enough time. Don't worry, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. General rule, remember the amount of evidence you use or the amount of quotes, if it's a written text, is the number of marks minus 1. So if it's a 5 mark question, you have 4 pieces of evidence. If it's a 3 mark question, 2 pieces of evidence. All right, so quickly identifying techniques appropriate to the media is essential. Yes, don't forget that if you have a visual text, so one of these, you're going to be looking for visual techniques. If you're doing a visual text, don't use imagery. I see that a lot. Try to not use imagery because imagery means that they're creating an image in the reader's mind. That's what imagery is. If I've created the image for you on paper, like if I've drawn something, I haven't really left much room for you then to go and create your own image. You know what I mean? You literally see the image and odds are you're not really playing around with that much in your mind. Written text, these are the different written texts you can have. I'm going to try and kind of ease through this because this is kind of the easier stuff and I want to move on to the more important stuff for you guys. So, how has symbolism been used to represent human motivations? Here we see a exemplar to that text that follows this structure that we spoke about. I'm not going to go through that. You can download the slides and go through that. If we have time at the end, I'll definitely come back to this, but I definitely want to move on to Module A so we can get you guys started for this year. I did see, again, someone ask about websites to use. I'll tell you some more websites during our break time, but a good website to use is literally the past papers from the HSC. Go to NESA and look at the different HSC exams and look at the different questions that they were asked for both Section 1 and Section 2 of the Common Mod. All right, I did want to do this. Now's your time to interact with me. With this image, I want you guys to tell me, sorry, let me create the poll. Oh, goodness. Okay. I want you to tell me what techniques you can see in this image and also what might their effect be, okay? So do you see a particular visual technique and then what could the composer be trying to tell us or evoke in us by having that technique? You can literally just put, this is a technique and then another line and then what you think the intended effect may be. And I will wait for that. And hopefully you guys can see each other's responses. Hopefully. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that because I think it's delayed as well. Okay, so the person who said visual, that's like there are visual techniques, but what do you mean by visual? Is there a particular visual technique that we see? All right, everyone's giving techniques and that's great. Maybe also jot down after you say your technique what the effect of it might be. So someone said symbolism. Let's be really specific. Symbolism of what? The trees, the letters, the floor, and what's it symbolizing? What's it trying to say? Symbolism is a massive one. Okay, cool. Symbolism of what? And what's it saying? Draw audience attention. Sense of disconnection. Nice. The vector of the letter. Nice. Draws our eyes to the tree and then that kind of heightens the symbolism of maybe wasteland or maybe the tree. Personification, interesting. I'd like to see, so the people that are writing personification, let me know what's being personified here. Is it, actually no, I'll let you. The tree. Oh gosh, I hope that's the person that wrote personification. Sorry, it's all anonymous, so I'm trying to I have to put it together. Okay, the tree is being personified. Interesting. I don't understand someone who said that. The person who said I don't understand maybe write a question now and I'll see if it comes up for me and I'll explain. I'm not sure what you don't understand. What don't you understand? Just jot it down for me. Dark and light, nice. Demand gaze, colors, color imagery. Okay, remember guys, I said imagery is not really for visual images and stuff like that. Okay, did the person write? No. Okay, I'm still waiting on you, whoever said I don't understand. Just jot down for me what you don't understand. Symbolism, that's kind of the big resounding one. So letters stand out. Nice. There's really good ones here. Good job, guys. Dark and light. Salience. Nice. We've got some really good ones. Positioning could be another one. So this is actually a book cover, if you can't tell. And yeah, definitely color. I like the personification. You could talk about the personification of these letters and almost, maybe not personification, but they're almost presented as wind. Okay, blown away, and that kind of supports the idea of a wasteland. As you can see, it looks really dry and the floor looks like that deserty, cracked pattern. Where there's something about the environment, or maybe this could be symbolic of someone's mental wasteland and how they feel inside. But that could be up to you to argue. All right, cool. That was really, really good. That was really good. Now, I have another one for us. This one may be a little bit easier. I'm not sure. Here, maybe don't worry about the intended effect because I'm not sure how well that works. Just tell me techniques in this one. Tell me different techniques we see. So try to find different ones. So maybe not just color. What are some really look at the image here? What could we talk about? And we'll see if, again, I think it's delayed. It might be delayed by like a minute or two. Gaze, good. That was like the first one that came through. I'm really glad. Good job to whoever said that. Yes, if you see, it's almost like our eyes are directed around the page via their gaze. We start over here and then it's almost like in this direction. We look at the fire, we look at them, and we look up at this person, okay? So it's almost like we're directed. Body language, nice. Light versus dark position, symbolism, leading lines, good. And yeah, the lines all contribute because they're also vectors as well as the gaze. Storytelling, yes, obviously that's not a visual technique, but yes, you would want to relate this, or you could relate this to the role of storytelling. Offer gaze, contrast, nice. Juxtaposition, framing, social gatherings. Okay, to the person that wrote social gatherings, can you see how that's not really a visual technique? You could talk about that in your response, how we're presented with what seems to be a social gathering, but try to focus on the techniques. Contrast, motif. Now, motif, you probably can't argue that there are motifs in a visual image because motif means that it's a recurring image across a text. In a visual image, you can't really have that because you're seeing everything all at once. So it's not like you flip a page and it keeps coming up as you do when you're reading a text. Like a symbol keeps coming up across the whole text. Here we see everything. So it's really just symbolism. Maybe if it was like a really big artwork and there were like small recurring symbols all throughout, you could argue that it's a motif, but here probably not.